Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head to the state of Thüringen in the former East Germany, and this is just a little bit to the north of Nuremberg actually, but this is probably one of the most famous beers from Germany. Most of you will recognise this one. So we're going to go to the Köstritzer Schwarzbierbrauerei, and today we're having a look at their flagship beer, which is of course the Schwarzbier itself. So I've actually reviewed the Keller beer from these guys, and most people I talked to didn't know that there was any other beers from Kostritzer besides the Schwarzbier, so do have a look at their website and you'll get an idea of the range of beers that they actually do have. The Keller beer was actually a pretty nice one. So anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be 2 or 3 minutes long, and it's quite an interesting one this, so I hope you'll stick with me for it. But if you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. As I said, the brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I've done from Kostritzer before. And please do have a look at my Facebook page and like it if you can, and add me as a friend on Untappd too. I've just started that up, so your support would be much appreciated. But anyway, as I told you, this brewery is from the small town of Bad Köstritz, which is from the state of Thüringen in former East Germany. It's a small spa town actually, and it's only got a population of about 3,600 people, so hopefully I can actually go and visit that sometime. But anyway, the first documentary mention of the Kostritzer brewery is in 1543 in the Erbsens Register, and this was actually when it was under this name of the Köstritzer Erbschenke. Now the brewery was then taken over by the Counts of Reuss in the year 1696, and then the company was renamed to Ritterschaftliche Gutsbrauerei, and since 1806 the brewery has been allowed to use the title of Princely Brewery after the Knights of the Reuss House were elevated to the status of being princes. Now in the year 1811 there were apparently 6,400 hectolitres of beer produced, and these were being sold as far as Berlin, Dresden, Magdeburg, and also over in Frankfurt in Western Germany. But apparently one of the most famous German authors, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, has been documented as saying he drank the beers from Kostritzer and also from Oberweimar during his time living in Weimar. Of course, Weimar is quite an interesting centre of German history, but the scholar Wilhelm von Humboldt wrote from Weimar in November 1823 to his wife Carolina about he and Goethe's diet, and essentially he was saying that both of them were swimming in beer and living off beer rather than eating their vegetables, much to Carolina's dismay of course. But Goethe apparently would also sneak off and drink more beer when people weren't looking too. So a little bit of a funny thing going on between some of the very well known German authors there. But in 1829 the brewery building burnt down along with 15 other buildings in Köstritz, and the brewery was then rebuilt in the west wing of the castle, and in 1875 the entrepreneur Rudolf Zesch leased the princely domains of Köstritz, Dürnberg and Hartmann village, and also the brewery of Köstritz as well. But the operation initially expanded under the guidance of master brewer Karl Holomuki. I'm guessing that he might be from Slovakia or something like that, but this expanded in the castle and other sites around Kostritz as well. But at this point the Schwarzbier and the Elsterhalles lager beer were being produced by the breweries, and there were apparently claims from the Schwarzbier that the Schwarzbier demonstrated health benefits during the 19th and 20th centuries, and in 1893 there was actually a brewery advert that recommended the beer from the high medical authorities, recommending it for people who were anemic, had lung disease and had recently given birth, nursing mothers and also convalescents of any kind as well. So they thought the beer genuinely had good health properties there. But the brewery apparently also sent Otto von Bismarck cases of the Elsterhalles lager beer for his birthday as well. And in 1896, just to give you an idea of how much the brewery had expanded, they were brewing 40,000 hectolitres of beer per year, 12,000 hectolitres of which were the Schwarzbier. But between 1906 and 1908 the brewery building was built, there was a new brewery building built by Zerch in Köstritz, but after the Second World War the building was apparently confiscated and it became the VEB Köstritzer Schwarzbierbrauerei, and in the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany as it's more commonly known, the company was one of the few who actually manufactured beer for export, and this beer was exported to West Germany from 1956 to 1976 and then later to the whole of Eastern Europe as well. And a new brewery was then constructed again in 1979 between that period and 1990 as well. But in April 1991 the company was acquired by the Bitburger Group, and it was modernised between 1991 and 1993. And in 1993, the company established the Schwarzbier as their main brand in the German beer market, and the brewery grew significantly over this period. In 1991, the capacity of the brewery was 145,000 hectolitres, but in 2005 it was 879 hectolitres, and today they've scaled it down a little bit to be 700,000 hectolitres per year. And apparently for their 450th anniversary, the brewery used the slogan, the black beer with the blonde soul as well, which was reportedly alluding to the French spy comedy movie The Tall Blonde Man with One Black Shoe. So that's your kind of interesting history of the Köstritzer Schwarzbierbrauerei. It's quite an interesting and quite diverse one actually, and it's cool to see that such an old brewery can last throughout even German history. Obviously has such a big turmoil in it for various reasons, but it's cool to see that such an old brewery has survived that long. But anyway, just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, of course you get the Schwarzbier, you get the Edelpils and the Keller beer, and there are a few other kind of mixed beer drinks such as the Cola beer and the Edelpils Radler and things like that as well. As I said, go and have a look at the brewery website and you will get an idea of all the things that this brewery do. But anyway, let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer then. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the artwork on the bottle. It's actually quite nicely presented, quite kind of classically German. You can see the brewery crest on the label there as it says 1543, so their 450th anniversary would then have been 1993, so quite a few years ago now actually. They're not too far away from their 500th anniversary actually, so I'm sure we'll see something from them for that. As you can see, there's the whole thing on the top label, and there is the Kostritzer bottle cap on the top there. It tells you a few things in German on the back, but it's just telling you about ingredients and hops and the German purity law and the usual things that you get on the back of German beers. But without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy. So it comes in, by the way, at 4.8%. I forgot to mention that, but this is one of the classic beers from Germany. But as you can see, pouring a very, very nice dark sort of rosewoody mahogany colour there. And as is typical with any good German beer, you always get a good head on this one. The Germans won't drink a beer unless it has a good head on it. But just without even paying too much attention to the aroma there, you do get a good bit of that nice kind of roasted coffee malt that you expect from the style. I've drunk this beer many times and I do know it quite well, but it's cool to actually finally do it as a review for you. So as you can see, like I was saying, it's poured a very nice sort of dark rosewoody mahogany colour. If I bring the light over, you can see that it does have just a little bit of a kind of ruby edge to it, but it's not transparent at all, and that's simply just due to the dark colour of it. If it was a bit lighter, I'm sure it would be, because it does look clear. There's no sedimentation and things like that. There's some big bubbles just sticking towards the side of the glass, but quite a few little bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head. As you saw before, there was about a 2.5 finger of a frothy kind of beigey tan coloured head there. As I say, looks a very, very nice beer. Nice little ruby edge to it, but I think with the light on the camera there you can't see too much of that. But let's get stuck into the aroma of this one then. So as you would expect from this beer, you've got a nice kind of toasted malt in this one. It's actually, in this one, it's actually quite a bready malt this. I was forgetting this about the aroma, that it is a bit more bready, more of a nice brown bread, but there's a good bit of sweet caramel and some biscuity grainy character coming out of that, and the coffee notes are a little bit more. You have to let the beer settle a little bit more to get the kind of coffee notes out of it. When you sugar it up, you'll get more of the kind of the sweet caramel and the biscuity and the sort of bready notes too. But yeah, when you just let it settle down just like this, you've got more of the coffee, the kind of slightly roasted coffee elements coming out of it. But there's a little bit of red fruit in this as well, which is typical of the style. But yeah, has everything you would expect from the Schwarzbier. Some nice kind of, more subtle in this case, some nice roasted coffee notes there in the back. A little bit of red fruit as well, but you've got your nice sweet caramel, slightly toasted notes in this one. A little bit of biscuity grains too, but a nice big kind of brown bready, sort of pumpernickel bread I guess you would describe it, or Americans would describe it like that. But a nice German kind of brown rye bread note coming off of this one. But without further ado, let's get stuck into this beer. So this is the Schwarzbier from Köstritzer Schwarzbierbrauerei in Bad Köstritz in Thüringen in Germany. Prost! Really nice actually, not that you would expect anything different from the Schwarzbier. But yeah, it's actually very, very smooth, which is one thing I'd forgotten about this beer. It has been a wee while since I've drank one of these. But yeah, as you would expect, you've got a nice lingering kind of roasted coffee malt in there. That just kind of moves out a little bit towards the kind of edges of the palate there. Around the main parts of the palate, you actually have quite a smooth grassy hop character to this one. At the very back corners you have of your tongue, just right at the very back, you've got a kind of earthy hop presence in there. And that's very typical of the German noble hops from the likes of the Tecknang region and things like that. The German noble hops tend to have a nice grassy and slightly earthy character to them, and you can pick that up in this beer. Just around the edges of the tongue. They're grassy as you go more forward on the tongue, but a little bit earthy as you go towards the back corners of the edges of your palate. But what I would say, the coffee character, the roasted character in this definitely builds a bit more as your mouth just adjusts to the flavour of this beer. So in the middle of the palate, you've got a nice kind of brown bready blanket that just goes right across the middle of your palate there. That's the kind of underpinning of this beer. Then on top of it, you've got a little bit of a kind of caramel sweetness that just goes right down the middle of your tongue. A little bit of a kind of biscuity and more grainy note just as you move a little bit away from the dead centre of your tongue, and it's really nice. One of the things I've always noticed about this beer is just how well the flavours blend together, and it really is a kind of staple part of the German beer diet, if you like. I can see why this beer is so popular. And of course, a lot of Germans like to drink their local beer, but this is one that you'll see all over Germany regardless of where you go. It's one of the few that isn't your sort of typical kind of Beck's beer or Bitburger or something like that. This is one that's a little bit different that you'll see distributed all over Germany, which is quite cool. But yeah, as I say, a nice lingering coffee character in this one as well. The roasted coffee just kind of comes in a little bit on top of that kind of cereally element there. Actually, the roasted coffee character in this, a little bit of bitterness and dry character you get from that, just goes right on top of the more cereally and brown bready character in the malt base on the middle of your palate there. But there is a nice caramel character coming from it too. But yeah, there is just a teeny little bit of red fruits. If anything, it is extremely subtle, but there is perhaps just a little bit of a figgy, slightly figgy flavour. Maybe the beer has oxidised a little bit and you're getting a wee bit of the fruity esters out of it, but I wouldn't think that would be a problem. The beer was cellared quite well actually, but there is just a little oily bubble forms behind the very front of your tongue, and you do get just a little bit of a kind of fruity character out of this one. But as I say, around the edge of the mouth you're getting the typical German noble hop characteristics there, so you've got a nice smooth grassy flavour around the edge of your tongue there. It becomes a little bit dry in the aftertaste. The very back corners of your palate you've got some nice earthy hop character, and in the middle of your tongue you've got a really nice kind of German brown bread, rye bread malt base that just blankets your palate. Down the middle of the tongue a little bit of caramelly sweetness, and as you move further out you've got some more of the cereal elements of that brown bread in there, and on top of that there's a nice kind of roasted coffee flavour in there. But very nice beer. There's not much more you can really say about Köstritzer Schwarzbier. It is very nice, and it's a very kind of distinctive flavour of beer, this one, I would say. But in terms of the mouthfeel, this, I would say it's definitely light to mid-body. It's a lot lighter than I remember it actually. Maybe when I was drinking these kind of fairly regularly, that was when I was starting to actually get into German beer properly. But it is a little bit lighter than the Brauhaus Schwarzbiers that you will get from the small breweries in Germany. But it's got a nice smooth carbonation to it, a nice malty sweetness as well, but there's a bit of bitterness just on top of that from those kind of roasted coffee malts there. And you've got a little bit of dry character from the hops in this one too, just around the edge of the tongue, particularly at the front there. Even though you've got this nice smooth grassy flavour, it does build in the aftertaste to just be that little bit dry. But overall it's a very nice, very smooth and quite an easy drinking beer. Not easy drinking isn't perhaps something you would expect of a dark beer, but this one is a very easy drinking one, and it's got a lot of good flavour in it as well. Very easy drinking, actually quite a sessionable dark beer, which is quite hard to find. But yeah, it's a very, very nice beer, and very cool to finally get around to reviewing one of the sort of classic German beers for you. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review as always. Please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this one if you do happen to have tried it before. Most of you will have, I'm sure, that watch this review, so please let me know your own thoughts on it. Always interesting to read them. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and like my Facebook page, add me as a friend on Untappd. Always interesting to hear from you on there too. I will be doing more of this, or more of reviews in this kind of German mini series that I'm doing for you. I'm just rattling through these beers before I move off to Sweden, because I've got quite a few German beers just sitting there that I need to go through. So I hope you enjoy the rest of this German series, but until my next one, Prost.